once again. Um, because of the wonderful way YouTube is working at the moment. This is how I'm doing videos at the moment. So I'm sorry if this video quality isn't brilliant. By the way, Dustin Segers. Now, for those who haven't seen it, Bible Thumping Window has put up a video today featuring Mr. Segers and his claims against evolution. Now, this is a challenge to you, Mr. Segers. Back up your claims that you're making about evolution. Now, I'm challenging you to a discussion, hopefully tonight, after I get home from work. You versus me one-on-one about this. Because you're wrong in several things you say. Let's take point number one. We are a transitional species. That is evidence that transitional species exist. The gorilla is a transitional species. The ape is a transitional species. The chimp is a transitional species. The bat is a transitional species. Most of the species in the world right now are transitional species. Okay, the word transitional species references a species that may evolve somewhere along the line, but again, or that has evolved. So basically, let's, for example, we see something that wasn't quite an elephant but became another elephant. That is a transitional species. So basically, something that's a common ancestor. So somewhere down the line, there was a common ancestor of the African and Indian elephant, and it diverged at some point to where they had some of the traits that the Indian elephant has and some of the traits the African elephant has, and that they evolved differently. So far, what you're positing doesn't really make sense. Point number two, to your point about creationist scientists. Okay, not one of them has produced a peer-reviewed article. Now, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing around to say that they cannot do so. Actually, a lot of scientists would like there to be evidence that evolution doesn't happen, because it means that the theory doesn't really hold up as well as they thought. So evidence provided would actually be something that they would admire. You know, something they would want. Something that they would actually desire to see, because then they would know that the theory needs readjusting and re-evaluating. Again, what they're positing isn't backed up by the evidence, because again, they haven't produced a peer-reviewed article. And if they did produce a peer-reviewed and it referenced God in a positive way, it would get shot down in flames. And I say this, Mr. Segers, because again, let's take somebody from the other side of the aisle, as we like to call it. Let's look at the atheist side. Let's take an atheist. Let's take somebody who is currently not. Jerry Coyne, for example, who does the blog evolutionisttrue.org, whatever it's called, who did a book on the same subjects. Now, sometimes he's wrong when he tackles religion, but when it comes to biology, he tends to know what he's talking about. Anyway, long story short, he does peer-reviewed articles. Now, if he was to do what he produces on his blog in a peer-reviewed article, he gets shot down in flames as well. Because if, let's say, for example, he was going to do a peer-reviewed article about the muscle density in African apes and how that came about. So let's say, for example, he was able to show, let's say, for example, 100 years ago, the muscle density in the African ape is a lot tougher or a lot softer than it is now. And then at the end of it, it says, by the way, this proves God because this, and this. He'd get blown out of the water. He'd get blown out of the water in a very, very, very dangerous way, because, again, even though some of the scientists he may be responding to may agree with his opinion, that's what it says, it's an opinion. They would basically tear him a new one to say, you can't make these sort of jumps. This is a leaping logic. You're pointing to things that are outside your parameters of science. You're making jumps in logic, in reason, in our preview, and just basically tear it to shreds. And he would have to do the same thing. So let's say Richard Dawkins or whoever was to do the same thing, he would have to do the exact same thing, because that's how science works. It cannot make jumps in logic like that. Okay, and the same thing in a positive way. You can't just say, well, this here proves that God exists, or proves that that God created the world, because that's a massive jump. You can say, well, if you look at this, I think it leads to people to maybe to be suggesting that it could be a creator. That would be interesting. That's something that we could maybe talk about. But again, to say it's a specific God, and specifically the God you worship, is a bit of a jump. So actually quite a massive jump. So Dustin, I mean, like, that's the reason why. And again, it has to be peer reviewed, because it may have mistakes in it. It may have quotation errors. It may have logical errors. It may have a lot of errors that the person knows about. And again, this isn't some special pleading thing. Everybody who submits something in the scientific community has to go through this. And trust me, the people who do go through it know that, again, if they submit a peer-reviewed article that has one mistake on it, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 20, they know for a fact it's going to get torn apart, and then screwed back together again and torn apart some more. Because that is the way that science works, because that's the only way that they can get the really good stuff out there. Because if they take the core theory, move it around a bit, and it holds up after it's been torn apart, they know that they've got a solid theory. Even if maybe the wording isn't great or whatever, they know that the core theory is there. They just maybe will tell the person that they need to maybe work on their work, the way that they're talking or the way that they're stating things, but the core theory still holds up because the evidence is there to support it. That's how scientific theories would work, Mr. Seger, sorry. Right. Third of all, right, you claim that there's a difference between normal evolution and special evolution. Define these terms for me, please. What is special evolution? Is this the same as macro? And again, there's no special evolution. There's just evolution, the theory. So, Mr. Segers, the ball's now in your court. Please make a video or challenge me to discussion, because I'd love to discuss this with you. Again, the theories that you're coming up, the things you're coming up with, are not supported by the evidence that we see for evolution. And if you wish to put it, they do so. I'm all ears, and so is the scientific community. Anyway, this has been 4 BB for Dreams May Go True, and it needs to go to work.